The Salvadoran immigrant who entered the United States illegally, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, has been returned to the U.S. after being deported to El Salvador. Attorney General Pam Bondi announcing charges of human trafficking today.
We want to thank President Bukele for agreeing to return Abrego Garcia to the United States. Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country.
Bondi says Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in human smuggling for about 9 years, including over 100 trips to traffic thousands of non-citizens throughout the United States. Some of those individuals, women and children. Others, Bondi said, were MS-13 gang members and violent terrorists. Abrego Garcia is also charged with transporting minor children for profit. President Trump commenting on Garcia's return, saying, quote, "I could see it either way, bringing him back or not, but bringing him back, you can show how bad he is." And as a feud continues between two of the world's most powerful men, President Trump says he's focused on policy and doesn't have plans to speak with Elon Musk anytime soon. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
A day after a dramatic blow-up of their relationship in public, President Trump told different reporters in phone interviews that he's not particularly interested in talking to Elon Musk now, who he says has, quote, lost his mind. But he also emphasized that he's now moving forward and focused on domestic and foreign policy, not on Musk or anything else. That echoing his message yesterday.
I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill.
Musk, after spending much of Thursday attacking Trump and his policies, held off on Friday, reposting only about Doge and his own companies. The apparent attempts to calm things down from both sides come as Republicans in Congress are rallying to Trump's side while also calling for a truce between the two.
I feel like the kids of a bitter divorce where you're just saying, I really wish mommy and daddy would stop screaming.
Look, I believe in redemption. I hope we can resolve it and get everybody together again. That's really important for all of us.
Democratic leaders, though, backed Musk in trying to kill Trump's massive tax bill.
That Elon Musk has made the point that the bill is a disgusting abomination.
The Republican House Speaker warning today that if Trump's big, beautiful bill does not pass,
then we're not going to have the House majority. And if we lose the House majority, and everything will go to chaos. So,
as the White House tries to move on, the president did not open his events today or talk to us on his way out. But on Truth Social, he reposted a statement from a lawyer who says he was hired to represent Jeffrey Epstein, and Epstein told him that he had no information to hurt Trump. This after Musk on Thursday escalated his attacks on the bill to Trump personally, accusing him of ties to the disgraced financer. And on Friday, Trump announced that his trade team will meet with China next Monday in London for a next round of trade talks. And that's part of what he agreed to with Xi Jinping during a call this week after the U.S. accused China of violating the trade deal. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And turning our attention now to the Supreme Court, where today allowing the Department of Government Efficiency to access Social Security data. In a 6-3 ruling, the High Court halting a Maryland judge's order that blocked Doge from the information. That includes Americans' financial records, tax information, and their Social Security numbers. 3 liberal justices dissenting. The case was brought by 2 labor unions earlier this year, arguing that granting Doge broader access would violate a federal privacy law and undermine procedures that keep the information safe. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow layoffs at Education Department to continue while the case proceeds. The request comes in the face of a pair of lawsuits brought by a group of 20 states, school districts, and teachers unions. They're challenging the administration's plan to permanently close the department. In April, the High Court allowing the government to cancel millions of dollars in education grants related to DEI initiatives. The Justice Department is asking the court for emergency relief. And at least 4 people reported dead in Kyiv after an intense missile and drone barrage. Ukraine saying hundreds of drones unleashed on its capital city. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has an update.
Residential buildings in Kyiv sustained damage on Friday amid an attack by Russia. Moscow reportedly launched over 400 drones and 40 missiles at Ukraine's capital city and other regions. Most of them were intercepted, but some hit people's homes, often near the windows.
Usually we stay in the corridor during attacks. But this time my wife insisted that we also sleep in the corridor, so I can say she saved my life.
According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the strikes damaged city infrastructure, hotels and more. Officials say at least 3 of the casualties were first responders who had rushed to the scene of one of the strikes. Not just Kyiv, but other cities report being hit as well. Video posted on social media shows large explosions in the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil. Zelensky is now calling on Western allies to impose additional sanctions on Russia.
Please, I ask you to support all the efforts to put pressure on Russia, including political and economic pressure. Please urge for new effective sanctions against Russia.
Russia also commented on Friday's attacks. A spokesman said the strikes came in response to an attack by Kyiv on a passenger train in Russia, which reportedly killed multiple civilians. Kyiv has not taken responsibility for the attack.
So if you have carefully read the statement by our defense ministry, it said that the strikes were carried out in response to terrorist attacks by the Kyiv regime.
Russian officials also said that Moscow struck only military and military-related targets in Friday's attack, not civilian targets. Also on Friday, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz returned to his home country after meeting with President Trump to speak about the Russia-Ukraine war, among other things.
My conclusion from this encounter is different from perhaps the public image. This American government is open to discussion, listens, and is prepared to accept other opinions.
The Chancellor highlighted the importance of strong ties between Europe and the U.S. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Reports indicating that Chinese companies will provide ballistic missile materials to Iran. According to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, Iran has purchased ammonium perchlorate from Hong Kong-based Lion Commodities Holding. The amount would allow Iran to build approximately 800 ballistic missiles to arm its proxies in the region like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. The purchase predates President Trump's proposed nuclear talks with the Iranian regime. Cyber attacks, break-ins, infiltration, and bribes. These are all tactics the CCP has been employing to silence dissidents on U.S. soil. Now the CCP's strategy has shifted to disinformation and lawfare. A forum out in Capitol Hill this afternoon featured NGO representatives and China experts diving into how the CCP is targeting the meditation discipline Falun Gong right here in America with a playbook that could be turned against anything or anyone in the United States.
The CCP's campaign against anyone who dares speak out against them from abroad, including in the United States, and continues unabated. In fact, the CCP's regime of repression beyond China's borders has only increased, even here on U.S. soil, and it continues to target Falun Gong practitioners and fellow democracy advocates.
Of course, we know that the repressive cases right here in the United States and across the West happen every day. An example comes from the 2024 Brookings Institution report that reported on the 102 Chinese police service stations. You gotta love the name, right? Service stations that operate in 53 countries, including in major cities in the United States.
From 2006 to 2024, the FBI documented over 130 attempts to sabotage Shengyun shows, and these include through cyber attacks, slashing bus tires, and pressuring theaters to cancel performances through CCP's consulates and embassies.
During the forum, right when the researcher from the Falun Dafa Information Center was talking about bomb threats targeting Shenyuan, the fire alarm suddenly sounded inside of the Rayburn Congressional Building. This is one of the 3 main buildings for the U.S. House of Representatives in the United States Capitol. The entire building had to be evacuated, including the forum. Similar incidents have occurred in other important meetings or forums exposing the CCP. It is not yet clear who pulled the fire alarm. So what does the latest jobs report say about President Trump's policies? And how can the United States help small businesses compete in the face of China's unfair trade practices? Joining me now to discuss is Republican Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here, especially on a flyout day.
It's great to have you back. May jobs report out today showing U.S. economy adding nearly 140,000 jobs. This is slightly more than expected. Unemployment rate holding steady at 4.2%. What is your take on this report, and does it reflect on President Trump's policies?
I think it absolutely does. And the fact that you're seeing this jobs report come out and the jobs numbers are reflective of the jobs that are growing in the private sector versus the job numbers that we saw during the Biden administration, where they were all created in the public sector and the government sector, I think is astonishing. The fact that you're seeing more businesses recognize the fact that we're going to have a tax bill that they're going to be able to work with, they're going to be able to invest. So you're seeing them investing there, you're seeing them growing. The job opportunities are just continuing to proliferate. I think it's a fantastic reflection on what happens when you've got sound fiscal policies. And you're taking American businesses and recognizing the fact that they've got needs and concerns with tax cuts, and you're responding to them.
So something that sets the United States and America apart from many countries, even some of the biggest economies in the world, is our small businesses. You have just recently had your bill, the American Entrepreneurs First Act, passed. Tell us about this and how it could help small business owners.
We have seen in the last several years folks who are taking advantage. This is part of the fraud that we talk about. People who are taking advantage of the system. We've got people who should never have been allowed into our country getting loans that are backed by taxpayer dollars. We've got people who have died who are getting checks. There's a tremendous amount of fraud. And what Kelly Loeffler and this administration has found over the last several months is that has had an effect on small business. So with small business loans, they found actually had over $630 million had been loaned to people who are under the age of 11 and over the age of 115. We also had examples of where people who were in our country illegally, businesses that they had a large percentage of, were actually given almost $1 million loan. So all this is doing is saying SBA has to verify age and legal status. And that was apparently a controversial bill. I had to defend it on the floor this morning. But we actually did have 8 Democrats that voted for it.
On the topic of small businesses, following President Trump's call with the CCP leader Xi Jinping, there's now talk of renewed U.S. China trade negotiations. What kind of measures could help the American small business compete, especially given the possibility of a continued influx of cheap goods from China?
We have a regulatory authority in the federal government that doesn't seem to recognize the fact that if you strap their hands behind their back of private business in the U.S., they cannot compete globally. And on top of that, then we end up importing goods that could be produced in the U.S. from other countries that don't pay any type of penalty at all. So it's a double whammy to our businesses that invest and hire in the U.S. So I have a Level the Playing Field Act that I've introduced that actually will go after places like China that are taking their goods, avoiding tariffs by taking their sticker off, going to another country. Instead of a made in China sticker, now it has a made in Mexico sticker, that are really, really harming our small businesses. These are businesses that want to be able to compete. They want to be able to sell in their neighborhoods. And it's impossible when you've got the unfair regulatory authorities here that from the Democrat perspective, just strangle them. And then we are importing, things that don't have the regulatory authority, that are made with child labor, and that don't have to have a fair playing field. So this is, I think, part of the tariff war and the discussions that Trump is having with China. Now, I am optimistic about what that means, but in order for this agreement to have any kind of teeth, it actually is going to have some provisions that will punish China for not following the agreement. Because we've seen far too often is China comes to the table, they come to an agreement, and then they walk away and they don't follow it.
The big, beautiful bill, White House says that the spending bill will not add to the deficit. You have people like Russ Vought, Secretary of OMB, a very sharp budget, fiscally conservative mind that also is behind this bill very much. Congressional Budget Office based its forecast on letting current tax cuts expire. What is your view on this, and what do you say to those who are cautious or skeptical about it?
Well, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the CBO's ratings. I mean, one, they haven't given to a Republican this century. But if you look at the projections that they made just on the TCJA alone and how far off they were on the growth projection of the actual, in reality, what that caused to the economy, the growth in the economy that the TCJA had, it's very difficult to take their numbers now. They're not taking into account the fact that with the tremendous growth that things like bonus depreciation and expensing and research and development tax cuts caused to the private sector to be able to invest and grow, if you take those away, it is reasonable to understand that the growth that you saw, you're going to see the exact opposite. They're not taking that into account. There's a number of provisions in this bill that will actually help grow the economy. And I say that this is part and part of a whole strategy. We need to make sure that our businesses can compete, that they're extending the tax provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 that are expected to expire. But we also have to look at things that are in this bill, providing the resources that are down at our border. We need to make sure that happens. We need to look at the energy provisions that are in this bill to make sure that we are unleashing American energy and getting rid of a lot of the regulations that have stifled it in the last couple of years.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, really appreciate you joining us, and safe flight back to the district.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.